Hey guys, today we are going to start our next silo, that is the importance and difference of GDP and GNP and how they are used in understanding the economic situation of a country. That is, by the end of this SLO, you will come to know two things. First is the difference between GDP and GDP, GNP and GDP. That's what is difference between GDP and GNP and how they are important. And and more specifically, you will know how these two indicators, GNP and GDP, are used in understanding the economic situation of a country. That's how these indicators, GNP and GDP, are used to understand whether an economy is developing or not, or what is the situation or what is the condition of an economy. You will come to know by using these two indicators, that is GNP and GDP. In previous SLO, we have defined these two terms, and while defining, we had discussed a brief difference between these two. Today, we are going to discuss more differences between GDP and GNP and uh, importance of GDP and GNP and how they are used to understand the economic situation of a country. Now let's see the difference between GDP and GNP. The first difference between GDP and GNP is the GDP is the value of domestic production, while GNP is the value of domestic and foreign production. GDP is the value of all goods and services produced within the geographical boundaries of country, that is the domestic production. Either it is produced by the nationals or a foreign company. If they are produced within the geographical boundaries, within the country, that's called GDP, gross domestic production. And the value of all goods and services produced by the citizens of a country, either within the geographical boundaries of a country or outside the geographical boundaries of the country, it's called GNP. GDP shows the value of production at home, while GNP shows the value of production by citizens of the country. That is, GDP shows how many goods and services are produced within the geographical boundaries of the country. And GNP shows the production of goods and services by the citizens of the country, either inside within the geographical boundaries or outside the geographical boundaries. For example, if in country A, if in country A, where goods and services worth 7 million are produced within the geographical boundaries, both by the citizens of the country and the foreigners, but they are producing within the geographical boundaries of the country. That will be called GDP. And if the citizens of the country produced, if within the geographical boundaries of the country, if citizens are producing 2 million and remaining 7 million are produced by foreign companies, then this 7 million will not be included in GNP. And if the citizens of that country produce 10 million outside the geographical boundaries of the country, this 10 million will be included in the GNP. Now, the GDP of the country will be 7 million and GNP of the country will be 12 million. Since the citizens of this country have produced 12 million, uh, 12 million rupees, they have produced 2 million within the country and 10 million outside. And 5 million was produced by the foreign companies. They will not, that will not be included in GNP, that will be included in GDP. And The 10 million rupees were produced by the citizens of the country outside the geographical boundaries. That will be included in GNP. The total GNP will be 12 million. Now, how they are important, the importance of GDP and GNP, how they are important and how they are used to measure the economic strength of a country. GDP and GNP are important figures. I'm sorry, guys, I have written GDP and GDP. This is the typing mistake. This is actually GNP. GNP and GDP are important figures because they give an idea of whether economy is growing or contracting. By looking at GDP and GNP, you can say that economy is growing or economy is contracting. For example, in the previous year, the fiscal year 2019 and 2020, the GDP of Pakistan, the growth rate of GDP of Pakistan was minus 0.3838%. It means uh, the production of goods and services in Pakistan decreased by 0.38%. Right? The growth in GNP and GDP shows that either the citizens of the country and the uh, production of goods and services within the geographical boundary are increasing or decreasing. By knowing this, you can easily find whether the economy is growing or contracting. Other importance is that they shows the employment level of the country, especially the GDP shows the employment level of the country. If GDP is increasing, it means more job opportunities are creating in the country. For example, if GDP is increasing, it means that more goods and services are produced in the country. When more goods and services are producing, it means more job opportunities are present in the country. So it is the GDP that shows the employment level of the country, and it is the GNP that shows the economic strength of the citizen. If GNP is increasing, it means the people of that country or the citizens of that country are earning more and more. So it shows that the citizens of the country are getting wealthier day by day. And GDP shows the employment level. If GDP is increasing, it means more job opportunities are there, or increase in GDP shows increase in employment level or increase in job opportunities. And increase in GNP shows the increase in wealth of the citizens. And these two indicators, GDP and GNP, allow policymakers, economists, and businessmen to analyze the impact of variables such as monetary and fiscal policy, economic shocks, tax and spending plans. Both private and government policymakers use these two indicators, GDP and GNP, to make their policies, their business plans. And especially the government is using these two indicators to make monetary and fiscal policies. Guys, monetary policy is the policy made by the central bank of the bank of the country that is related to the supply of money. If GDP and GNP are increasing, it will be desirable to adopt a loose monetary policy, that is to increase the supply of money. And if GDP and GNP are decreasing, then it will be desirable to tighten the monetary policy by reducing the supply of money. And fiscal policy is the policy related to taxes, and this policy is made by the this policy is made by the finance department, that is the Ministry of Finance, and it's related to taxes. This policy is also made by analyzing GDP and GDP. If GDP and GNP are increasing, it will be desirable to make a loose fiscal loose fiscal policy, or sorry, tight fiscal policy by increasing taxes. And if GDP and GNP are decreasing, it will be desirable to make a tight fiscal policy, that is to increase taxes. So either the country is going to make a tight monetary policy and loose fiscal policy, or tight fiscal policy and loose monetary policy. That all depends on the growth of GDP and GNP. So it is the GDP and it is the GNP which are used to make economic policies. And and private business class also use these two indicators to make their business plans. uh, if GDP and GNP of a country is increasing, it means more opportunities are present in that country. So it will be desirable to, or it will be desirable to do business in that country, right? So these two, GDP and GNP, are very important figures. Initially, these two were only used for measuring economic development. But later on, nowadays, UNP had made a broader parameter for measuring economic development. They have used almost 72 different parameters, but still GDP and GNP hold a prominent position in that basket of parameters. And GDP and GNP are used to measure the economic strength of a country. At this point, I am not going to give you an assignment since assignment is given to you separately. Thank you for joining. Take care. Goodbye.